Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back. For those who are maybe newly subscribed to the channel, who are used to my more regular videos, painting content, review content, and are wondering what the hell this is, don't panic. This is not a new direction for the channel. This is actually an old direction for the channel. It started out with the 9th Age battle reports, and so maybe a couple of times a year I'll get out and get to go to a tournament, and when I do, I'll throw these little reports together. But when I do, it'll fall outside of my normal release schedule. By and large, this channel will still be painting and miniature review content. So again, if this isn't for you, if you're not even here for the ramble content, please feel free to skip this one. But if you're a 9th Age player, hello. You have maybe, if you've been subscribed for a long time, waiting for another tournament report, this one will be for you. So if you are not familiar with the 9th Age, but maybe with Warhammer Fantasy, I might encourage you to stick around, even just to tune in for like maybe the first battle report, if nothing else than as a favor to me, because I'm curious to see if you're able to keep up, because what this game is, it's again the 9th Age. It started out as the spiritual successor to 8th edition, back when Games Workshop nuked it, and well before, the old world was ever announced as an upcoming project. So I actually think you'll be able to keep up, because the game structure is very similar, and where there are new rules, a lot of them are just like reworded old rules, maybe with new names, things like that. So I imagine, again, it's just more personal curiosity, that if you played 8th edition, I think it'll be like a speaking Portuguese versus Spanish thing, where I think you'll actually be able to follow along pretty well, because the phase structure is identical. It's still, deployment, movement, magic, shooting, combat. So it's going to, I think, be very similar to 8th edition, kind of in terms of the progression of the game. So with all that out of the way, what this is, it's a one-day tournament that I attended this past Saturday down in Timonium, Maryland. It's at Titan Games and Hobbies. And this is a 4,000-point game. We're in 3rd edition now, which was released last year. This is the most recent patch. And I'm playing a variant of my Human Swarm list. I play Empire of Sunstall, again, 4,000 point list, and I typically take like a crazy number of models, like 300 models in a game, where I would say like 100 to 120 is probably like a standard list. And so I've toned it back a little bit for this particular build. I'm not going to read the list out, but yeah, I'll scroll here kind of in the background if you're curious to see what it is that I'm taking. Still a lot of models, but not nearly as many as I've done in the past. Again, this is going to be 3 games, and let me pull up my opponent's list for the first round here. So my first game, this is going to be a frontline clash, battle line game. Hold the center was our primary objective, and this is against James, who's also the event organizer, and he's bringing out his Highborn Elves. So you can see his list there. And once again, I'm not going to read it out, but I'll explain where things are in the deployment phase. In terms of secondaries for this first game, for me, it was also, I think it was stand firm, or work as one. It's work as one, where you have to have multiple scoring units in the center, which works very nicely with the primary being what it is. And I don't remember what James's was. I think it was getting units in my deployment zone or something to that effect. So anyway, let's move into the deployment phase. And here we go. So this is post-deployment for the first game here. I will say in advance, for this first battle report, it doesn't come up later, but there are some glare issues with the photos that I took, because this was very early in the morning. And so we were right next to a window where you can see there's a lot of sun streaming through. So in some of the shots, you get kind of rays of sunlight and some kind of lens flare issues. But this is only for this first game where that seems to happen. In terms of deployment, let's talk about my opponent first, because in all games, I was the defender, which meant that I got to choose table side, and my opponent then deployed first. And in all 3 games, I went second as a result, because my opponents were the attacker. So left to right from my deployment, or my opponent's deployment, on the far side of the board there, he's got a unit of 5 Reavers with bows, medium, like 20-something model unit of Sea Guard. He's got the High Prince on the Griffin with the Nova Flare, so it's like a 700-point flying killing machine. Decent sized unit of Swordmasters, I think like mid-20s Swordmasters with a BSB in the front rank, and then a Mage in the second rank there with the Mimic Cloak. Right next to that, you've got a big block of Citizen Spears. Behind that, you can see one of the 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers, and there's another one hidden behind the wing of the Griffin. So he's got 2 back there, right up against his board edge. And on his far left, my right, you see that unit of 10 Ryman Knights, so Dragon Princes. In terms of my deployment, we'll go left to right as well. So on my far left, you can see Riders. This is after Vanguards, just so everybody's aware. So that's why things are kind of slightly out of position. In terms of Vanguards, I've actually got 4. I have my 2 units of Riders. My Rangers can Vanguard. They're hidden up in the ruins there in the very center of the board. And then as the defender, I'm allowed a 3-inch Vanguard for one of my units. And in this case, I chose the Crossbowman. And a 3-inch Vanguard, just so we're clear, you can still do a march move, so you can actually move up to 6 inches. So that's fun. So yeah, I've got my Riders on the left, brace of pistols, a unit of 16 crossbows with the pennant that lets them stand and shoot. Unit of 15 Imperial Guard with great weapons. That's a support unit on the hill there. A big block of 40 hand weapon and shield, state infantry. Another unit of 15 Imperial Guard with great weapons. I've got 2 units of flagellants. Those are the 2 big blocks, kind of in the center right there. War altar in between them with a prelate, great weapon, and then my block of knightly orders with my BSB, and my general with the light of Sunstall is in the very center bottom of the picture there. I've got a second unit of Riders way off on the right hand side. I couldn't capture them in this image, but there they are after their Vanguard, kind of squaring off with those Ryman Knights. So there we go. So again, I mentioned my opponent's got turn 1, so let's jump into it. I'm going to keep these kind of quick. I'll do all the battle reports as one video here. So my opponent's turn 1, he moves up a little bit, but kind of tentatively. Again, hold center is the objective, and doesn't actually start scoring until, I think, turn 3. So he moves up with the Citizen Spears, like you see. The Swordmasters are technically touching the woods, which means they get soft cover. I disagree with that, but it is what it is. But that's why he's a little bit hesitant, because he's just going to get shot at with my crossbows. So he doesn't want to do that for more turns than is necessary. So otherwise, he kind of holds back with everything. Magic, I'll bring it up when it is relevant, but I will say over the entirety of the event, I felt Magic was kind of low impact. So if you hear me skipping a Magic phase, it's generally because either nothing happened or something very small happened. So that was the case here. So we went right into a shooting phase. That's the Sea Guard there. I had nothing else to shoot at, so they plinked a wound off of my Rangers in the center. And those are Arcane Ruins, but they only counted as Arcane Ruins for the first game. The other 2 games, we ignored Arcane Rules entirely. So it's not to the end of my movement phase that it's triggered, so we don't know what it is yet, even though the Rangers are in that Ruins. On the right, the Reaper Bolt Thrower takes a wound off of the Riders. I think I got lucky there, actually, because I think they hit on 3s. So, yeah, hitting on 3s, winning on 3s, AP2, should have knocked off more than that, but I'll take what I can get. The other one does a little bit of a number on this, I guess just 2 wounds off of the crossbows. And then we're into my turn 1, so I've got no reason to hang back in the way he does, so I do a movement order on the unit of Imperial Guard there. Minimize courage, the Imperial Guard, the hand weapon and shield state troops can give themselves an order from the War College banner each turn, so they're just going to generally give themselves minimized courage. Riders moving up on the left, and my whole battle line, you can see it's just kind of running toward the center here. Give my opponent something to think about. My Magic phase, I get Pyroclastic Flow off and knock a few wounds off of the Sea Guard there. And then we're actually already into my opponent's turn too. So the Rangers disappeared there because those ruins ended up being a Vermin Swarm maze, so they get to ambush. They disappeared last turn, and my next turn they're going to try to ambush on the far side of the board is what will happen. So my opponent actually, I think he backs up with the Swordmasters a little bit. He's still playing very hesitantly, and he does declare a charge with the Dragon Princes, the Ryman Knights, on the right side. It was a long charge on the Riders. I think he needed a 5 or a 6, and he failed it, so they just kind of lunge forward a little bit. His Magic phase, he gets off the Cosmos spell, where he does 3 hits on one unit, 2 on the other unit, and 1 on the third unit. So he picked the Imperial Guard, middle unit of Flagellants, and the Altar, and does a handful of wounds across those 3 units. And then in his shooting phase, a combined bout of shooting from, I think, both the Sea Guard and one of the Reapers. Does a couple of wounds over there. And then, yeah, the Reaper on the right was unlucky the first turn, but lucky the second turn, so balanced out. He killed off that unit of Riders over on the far right-hand side. And now we're into my turn, too. So I don't have any charges to declare. I run up with everything one more time into the ruins with the left unit of Flagellants there. And just peeking around the corner, that's a building underneath that deck of cards there on the right with those flagellants. So their flank is protected from the dragon princes on their right. But at this point, I'm just more like daring him to charge me, because I think I've got enough bodies that I can grind down these units. So he's not eager to engage without any like combined charges. And I mentioned the Rangers ambush next to that Reaper in the back. And on the left, I'm doing kind of the opposite. The crossbows and the Raiders are both holding back, because they're really the only thing stopping that Griffin from just having his way with that left flank. So they're the only thing challenging it. So I'm perfectly content with him just sitting there and keeping his Griffin honest. And then, yeah, I think this is actually the shooting phase. So the Rangers do, I think, 2 or 3 wounds. He had gotten, one of his spells he got off in his last phase was the Highborn Elf Hereditary, which allows him to gain tokens that he can sacrifice to prevent wounds. So that's what he ends up doing, is he tanks some of those wounds that way. And that's pretty much it for me. I have very little shooting. Again, the Riders and the crossbows on the left have nothing to shoot at. So after the Rangers fire, we're into his turn now 3. So he's got to get a little bit more aggressive here, because now at the end of this turn 3, I'm going to start accruing points for objective. So he's angling his Ryman Knights accordingly. Again, they're still in the front, but he has a really long charge. I think it's like mobility 9 on those, so he doesn't need to get too close to me in order to threaten me. The Swordmasters stay still, but what he does is he bumps the Mage over into the Sea Guard, who then turn to face the Rangers, kind of, is what they're aiming toward. And then toward the left there, what you might have seen a little foreshadowing of is the Reavers move out to chaff the big block of heavy infantry, and the Griffin comes out to play, kind of daring me to charge with those Imperial Guard. So we'll see what I do in my next turn there. And then, yeah, I can't remember if it was a fireball or not a fireball, but Ice and Fire is the magic missile, or shooting, or some combination thereof, does a couple of wounds to the Rangers. It must have been a combo, because, yeah, in the end, they end up with 1 model. Just staring at that Reaper, but they do pass their discipline check. And he actually, the other Reaper, sneaks a single bolt onto the Prelate, the altar there, and does 3 wounds to him. Got through the Aegis save, and he rolled up 3 for his wounds. So that's unfortunate, because it's sitting on 1 wound left, so I can't really throw him into combats anymore. But it kind of is what it is. And here we go. So we're into my turn 3 now. I move up a little bit. He's basically got guaranteed charges on me everywhere. It was more just a matter of angling things so that nobody's getting a flank. And yeah, I think in either case, I'm going to get, beat up by any of these units charging in. But I expect that with my flagellants. I kind of go into the game assuming they're going to die. So it's more just a matter of, choosing which combo charge you want to do here. If you charge with the Swordmasters and the Spears on the left, or Spears and Dragon Princes on the right, that's up to him. So we'll figure it out. And then, yeah, I do end up charging the Imperial Guard into that Griffin, not because I think I'm going to win the combat, but because I'm hoping I can at least do enough wounds to, like, hold. I've got my BSB and my General nearby, so we'll see. I'll kind of get into the math of it, but I figure the alternative is he's going to be running around with the Griffin on the left at this point, so this is kind of my one opportunity to try to slow him down a little bit. So as a result, because they're no longer babysitting, the Riders on the left run up around that impassable. In the magic phase, I threw Dragon's Roar. This gives them a breath attack and a grind attack. It's not going to do too much damage because he's got Dragon Forged armor, so he's got a resistance against flaming. And yeah, this really is going to be down to a handful of combat res, because he's probably going to do like 6 or 7 wounds to me, but I'm coming in with actually 4 static combat res, charge 2 ranks, and a banner. And I think with great weapons, I can probably do 1 or 2 wounds. So it's going to be that kind of a combat where every kind of wound counts here. So we'll see how it ends up going. Shooting phase, nothing really to do. And as you can see here, it doesn't go great. So even with, and my math ended up being about right. I ended up losing combat by, I think, like 2. But even with the rerolls over there, I lose and run, and he runs me down. And now that was my turn. So he's now in a position where he can charge those crossbows in his next turn. And I had also charged, I don't think I mentioned it, the heavy infantry, and to clean up that chaff. And so they overrun a little bit, and I did not overrun with the other unit of Imperial Guard, just to threaten the flank of those Swordmasters. if they chose to come in. So my opponent's turn 4 now. He does charge the Griffin into the crossbows. Who can blame him there? And then he does end up doing some charges over on the right. He doesn't charge with the Sword Masters. He just sits back like you see him there. But on the right, he does a combo charge with the Ryman Knights and the Spears into the Flagellants. So I'm definitely expecting to lose those Flagellants, but they are rerolled a hit in the first round of combat here because of the Prelate nearby. So, and they have Dying Blows, so they're all going to get the strike no matter what. So it's more just a question of if I can do enough wounds to have them not pop in a single turn, because if I can do that, you can see that those Flagellants have a tasty flank charge on those Spears. So actually, I'm trying to not do wounds to the Spearmen because I want to keep those back ranks so that I still have that flank charge there. So we will see how things go. In Magic phase, he casts Wail and Woe onto the Sword Masters, which I think is -1 to wound. And then over here, he does some shooting on the Riders, but they don't flee. And then, yeah, I got lucky here. Like I got unlucky with the Imperial Guard, where I had exactly 5 models left at the end of this combat, and they stick. They have a rank, so they ended up sticking, rolled low for my leadership test, so in a good spot there. So I get to hold them up now. It's going to be my turn next, which means I can get some of my units in the center out of the way and away from the Griffin, because if he wins combat in my turn, he's going to turn to face, and then he'll be in position to charge in his next turn. So the combat here goes much better than I expected. I ended up doing 5 wounds to the Ryman Knights on the right, and only a handful of wounds to the Spear, so I've still got a nice flank charge over there. And I charge him with everybody. So what I do is I charge the Imperial Guard in to get them out of the way of the Knights. I wanted the Knights through those ruins and into that Swordmaster combat, because what happened is the crossbows did die, or they are going to die, excuse me, as I just mentioned. He's going to turn the face with his Griffin. I don't need him rear charging me with his Nova Flare Griffin. So it was more to get those Knights out of there, even though I think that Swordmaster combat's going to be a rough one. It's my turn, so I can boost with magic. And I think between all those attacks, I'll be able to beat up on the Swordmasters pretty well. And then, yeah, that flank charge on the Spearmen, I also charge him with my pay card there. And then, yeah, I had gotten the mobility order on the larger unit of troops there, because these guys had turned to face the Riders, so I was able to charge them in the flanks. That's awesome. But you can see he had popped his wizard out a turn earlier. And I positioned the pay card. Had positioned the pay card so that he was giving rerolls to hit to all 3 of those combat units. And you can see this is post-combat. I did a bunch of wounds to both of the Spearmen and the Ryman Knights. They both break, but I wasn't able to catch either unit. So I ended up being in this weird position like this. And then it gets even weirder because the Swordmasters break. Let me see if I can zoom in here. The Swordmasters break, don't actually run very far, but I don't pursue very far with either unit. So the Imperial Guard are 1 inch behind the Swordmasters. The Knights there had pursued, but didn't go far enough to catch them, but they end up running into the flank of the fleeing Spearmen. It was an absolute mess. But we looked the rule up, and what's weirdest about it is that the unit is destroyed, but not yet. So I'm technically engaged with a shaken enemy, and it's at the beginning of the next combat phase that they'll be removed as casualties. So very strange, but this is where things end up. So his whole battle line there is fleeing, so that's a great spot for me. And then, yeah, the Sea Guard predictably do flee and run, and I run them down, catch them. That's where the unit ends up sitting. And then this is, we're now into my opponent's next turn. So he moves up with his Griffin. He's weaving his wizard there behind my unit of sword and board state troops. And his rallying doesn't happen until the shooting phase. Again, if you're a Warhammer player, that's one big change, is rally tests are at the end of the shooting phase now. So, yeah, we've already skipped through that. So he does rally with the Sword Masters, and he rallies with the Ryman Knights over on the far right, and I destroy the Spearmen. I flip my Knights around at the end of the combat phase there, and this is now into my turn, because that was his turn where he was just kind of positioning some stuff. Really nothing happened in the magic phase. Little to shoot. So we're now into my next turn. I made a mistake here. I charged in with the Imperial Guard to get them out of the way of those Knights, but I forgot that if you reform with Knights, or pivot with a unit post-combat, you can't charge with them the following turn. I was hoping to have them charge into his Mage. So I charged out of the way with the Imperial Guard so that it would free that charge up, but I couldn't do it anyway. So I'm kind of sacrificing them to the sword masters, because you can see I didn't need the help there because I've got those flagellants charging into the flank of the sword masters, and the flagellants on the far right charge into the 3 remaining Ryma knights. So but I do just move up with the knights, and the riders move in to try to shoot the mage off the table. Get the bound Aegis off on that one. I get Dragon's Roar on my BSB to try to breath weapon off that wizard if my riders can't do the job, but they end up doing that. I don't know if I have a shot of that or not. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, we blast them off the board. In the combat phase, I get the Ryma Knights down to 1 model, but we ended up standing there. And then, yeah, as a result of the Imperial Guard charging in, which I didn't even need to do, he ends up doing enough wounds to me that he holds. So that's where he sits there. And the swordsmen, the hand weapon shield boys, had charged into one of the Reapers there and crushed it. They're actually facing sideways. I had turned them to face kind of like in a net formation. So they're 8 wide currently and 5 deep, facing over to the right-hand side. And now we're into his turn. So he had charged with his Nova. I couldn't get him out of the way, but he charges in to kill that prelates. This is actually end of his turn. I got kind of quick with pictures at the end here, but this is the end of his, I guess would be last turn. So he cleans up those points and yeah, destroys the altar. And he had reformed with the sword masters. There's actually not that many left. I think there's just the 6 in the front on the sword masters there. They return to face me. Everything else on the tray is dead. And I had charged in. This is now into my final turn. So I charged in with the swordsman into the battery there. And the hope is that I'll be able to destroy it over and into the back of the sword masters so that I can finish that unit off. And that's exactly what happened. So really nothing in the magic or shooting phase worth talking about. The swordsman kill that overrun. Ends. I think I needed like a 7 on my overrun, and I got it. So they overrun into the back of the sword masters. But what ends up happening, you can see over here, this is basically the last shot of the game. He's got 3 models left. He ends up making his break test here because he's still got his BSB alive. So he makes his break test on those 2 remaining sword masters is what's left, because it's 1 character and 2 sword masters. And I'm not able to finish off that Dragon Prince. So in the end, though, yeah, fantastic game, really enjoyable. And in the end, it ends up being a 16-4 victory to me. It was, yeah, really great game. Had fun with it. And, yeah, 16-4 to me. I'll take that for the end of my first game. Now we're going to jump right into game 2. So this is against Chris, who in my prior tournament series played a Dwarven Holds list. So he's playing Gobos this time. And this is a Mad Git heavy list. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to pull up any more lists because they're not displaying properly on my phone anyway. But I can give you the gist of it in the deployment phase. So over on the left, you see all this stuff here. That's going to be all of his like random... or not random, that's going to be all the stuff that's ambushing, either Mad Gits. He's got 8 Mad Gits in this list. He's got a pump wagon over on the far left, unit of 25 spears. He's got a wrecking team. He's got 15 squigs with 10 squig hoppers behind them, or Nasher Dashers. He's got a Git launcher behind that, a big block of 60 poison spears with a handful of characters. He's got a mage, BSB, and a general in there. And then the deployment is basically mirrored on the other side of his deployment line. So Nashers, Hoppers, Git Launchers, Wrecking Team, 25 more Goblins, and another Pump Wagon. So it's a lot of Goblins to chew through, and it's a lot of Mad Gits. So my goal into any game really is like, I'm hoping for a 10-10, but on this one especially, it's going to be such an attrition battle that I think that's kind of my best hope. We screwed up on the deployment. We did the wrong one. This is the one where we... I'm up 15 inches and he's got a 9-inch wider deployment zone. Like I have a 15 up and I guess it would be 48-inch wide deployment zone. No, less than that. 36-inch wide deployment zone. No, 48. Anyway, I've got the narrower but deeper deployment. He's got the wider, shallower deployment. But he ends up getting first turn my deployment. I forgot to mention the riders on the far left got crossbows. The knightly orders are there with my characters, Imperial Guard, big block of 40 swordsmen, both my flagellants there on the hill, and then the prelate altar behind them. And then I've got Riders, Rangers, and Imperial Guard over on the right here. So we'll see what happens. He gets first turn. He runs up with everybody. So you can see he's surging over on the right-hand side. And the same thing happens on the left there. Magic phase, he gets off weakness against ranged. So he's going to be able to reroll a wound against my flagellants here. But they've got resistance inherently against strength 5 and less. So it ends up really just canceling the rules out. And then the Get Launchers, one hits and does damage. The other one hits but rolls a 6, so he drops a Mad Get in front of me. So my journey into Get Hell is beginning already. So, yeah, this is now where he sits at the end of his... I think that was just me demonstrating where the shooting is happening, because we're now moving into my turn 1. So I'm moving up over on the right-hand side. I'm going to try to blast that pump wagon on the right. The Riders on the left are kind of doing the same thing, moving around to shoot at that pump wagon. I get a Pyroclastic Flow off to kill the first of the 2 wrecking teams. You can see the one on the left there. It's now gone. Blast it off the field. And then in the shooting phase, between the crossbows and the Riders on the left, I'm able to kill the pump wagon. And then on the right-hand side, I was able to do 3 wounds to it between the Rangers and the other Riders, but not enough to kill it. So we're now moving into his turn 2. He runs in with the pump wagon. I deliberately moved the Riders there. I was on the fence about this, but I figured if I'm in range to shoot it, he's probably in range to hit me anyway. So I'd rather him charge the Riders than the Imperial Guards. I was trying to make them a more tempting target. So he ends up charging in there. Magic phase, he ends up doing the exact same things. He gets off the same spell on them. So he's going to have... rerolls, or I guess not rerolls, but no forced rerolls either, right? It's canceling out resistance, the weakness against shooting. And then he's moving up thusly. You can see he moves over here with the unit of spears kind of against the Riders. That's actually a good thing for me, because those units are really there as Mad Get delivery systems, right? So I'd rather him release the Mad Gets over there against those Riders, have them away from my battle line. So we'll see what he does. But those now Mad Gets are dropped at the beginning of a player turn. So he won't do it now. He'll probably do it at the beginning of my turn. Shooting phase, yeah, he beats up on those flagellants again. Oh, secondaries were... I should talk about that. So primary objective is I'm trying to get my scoring units into the deployment zone, his deployment zone. And he is trying to kill this unit of flagellants. I think he had got to choose 2 units, and if either of them are dead at the end of the game, he gets his secondary. And my secondary was also work as 1 again, so I'm trying to get scoring units in the middle. So a lot to think about in terms of primary and secondary objectives, but that's why he's hammering on this unit of flagellants in particular. So now we're into my turn 2. So I move the Riders around that building there to give them options maybe to go after the Get Launchers. I really don't know yet, but he does release the Mad Gets, or 2 of them, over on the left. And I move up with everybody. So you can see the Knights have kind of moved up next to the crossbows there. And I've moved up with my main battle line, because again, I'm now trying to contest the center there. So we'll see what happens. And then over on the right, he does end up killing the Riders with that pump wagon in the last round of combat. He releases 2 Mad Gets over here. So the Imperial Guard really have no incentive to move up. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of be a nuisance over on the right, see if they can hold up more points than they're worth. Bound spell, I get the Bound Aegis off bubble from the Prelate. That's what we're looking at there in the shooting phase. I'm able to shoot off 1 of the Mad Gets on the left, and then the crossbows do, I think, just a couple of wounds. I think they're starting to shoot at the Nashers there, next to that big block of 60 spearmen. Over here on the right, the Rangers are actually able to kill off that, they had only had 1 wound left, that pump wagon, but that's what I'm showing here. Into my opponent's turn, I think 3 now, so he charges in on, this is against the rightmost larger unit there. He charges in with both the Hoppers and the regular Nashers, and we'll see how that goes. Again, I've got the Aegis, that's kind of the only thing I got going for me over there. He does ambush in with his unit of Gogtuk Neophytes to try to beat up on those crossbows. And then he's moving around, as you see, toward the center of the board there. So I don't know what I'm trying to show you here. I think it's that he is shooting at me, but it looks like I've still got my full complement of guys there, so maybe it's just a duplicate picture. Over here, yeah, he had 2 mad gets over on the right, and one of them hits the unit, the other one does not, but you can see he does some damage to me. He gets off that same weakness to range spell again on the flagellants, and then in the shooting phase, he's able to blast some of them off the board. He only does 1 wound with his shooting attacks from the Gogtuk ambushers there. And then, yeah, this goes really well for me. So the flagellants are able to tank some that you can see they took a bit of a beating, but not nearly as badly as it could have been. And they're able to run down the squig hoppers, and the regular unit of Nashers is running away. So you can see, too, that was in my opponent's turn, so I'm in a really good spot to flank charge his bunker there. So we'll see how that goes. And then we're now into my next turn. So what actually happened here was I tried to flank charge with those crossbows. I wanted to get him away from his ambushing unit there, and I thought actually with all the static combat res being brought in, I charged with the Imperial Guard into this unit of 25 spears, ran them through both the mad gits, so they took a ton of damage. And then I was trying to flank charge with the crossbows as well, but I think I needed a 3 and I rolled a 2 or something like that for my charge, which happens. And then the regular, the knightly orders are just moving up behind the Imperial Guard there, and I'm marching way up with my big unit of swordsmen there. Riders move around behind the hoppers on the left, and I do pull this flank charge off. So he had dropped the mad git to try to deter them, but because of I had to first charge the fleeing Nashers out of the way, but they fled far enough that it opened up a gap such that I didn't need to go through that mad git in order to charge him in the flank. So that's fantastic positioning, especially since all of his characters are in that unit. So see what kind of damage we can do. And then over on the right, yeah, the Imperial Guard really have no reason to engage that unit. I'd rather him like just keep coming at me, and I'm just backing up slowly, kind of luring him around that impassable so to take them out of the game. And then the Rangers are just moving up to shoot at that fleeing unit of Nashers. And yeah, here you can see how things sit in the center there. Magic phase, nothing really happens, so shooting riders take off a couple of the hoppers there. And then in combat, yeah, unfortunately, I only had 2 guys remaining in that combat, so he is able to easily kill them off. And in this combat, he has that unstable banner. So I do a ton of damage to him. You see the pile of goblins back there, because that was flagellants charging the flank. And he's able to hold and then turn to face me, but you can see that unit of 60 is now down to like 30, so about as good as it can go. And yeah, I'm still gonna get a whole nother round of beating up on goblins here, so not a bad position to be in. His turn now. He's charging into the front of the knightly orders with again, it's only like 20 goblins now. He does have a mauler in there with a great weapon, but I'm not too worried. It's only AP2 now, so there we go. Over here, the mad git runs into the Imperial Guard, but he's just moving up with that unit. It does some more wounds, but there's mad gits everywhere. This mad git runs into the unit that's in combat, does 3 wounds to him. So there you go, there's some more mad gits. And then over here, this is after he then moves the unit up right in front of the Imperial Guard. And then what we're showing here is his hoppers turning to face the riders. There's still a mad git roaming around over on the left there. And then he doesn't charge the back of the crossbows. I think he said he regretted that he should have charged, and I think I agree, because he was going to just shoot at them some more. And we're not in a shooting phase yet. Now, again, magic phase, he gets off. Evil Eye, and he's still got that rerolls to wound up against them, so I'm not getting my resistance bonus. And he got off another spell. I think it's decreasing movement. And he does, yeah, a ton of wounds, but there's still 2 guys left, and they're fearless, so he's going to have to dedicate more resources to secure his secondary objective. So I like that. Yeah, here now we're in the shooting phase. He does a couple more wounds to the crossbows that he did not charge. And then, yeah, even only AP2, there's a mauler in there with a great weapon. I do a ton of wounds to him, as you can see. But he does 4 wounds to these knights that got hurt by the Mad Gits. I've only got 3 models left in this unit and then 2 characters. He does fail, but he holds. Or he fails. He loses combat, but he holds. And then, yeah, he ends up finishing off the Flagellants in the combat on the right-hand side, but they do a bunch more damage to the Goblins. So I'm going to have to throw this unit of Swordsmen in to try to shift that unit, because that's generally the rule with this kind of a list, where if you get to the bunker, you win. And if you don't, you don't. So I'm going to have to, and that's just my play style. Like, I don't play safely, which makes me, I've mentioned this on the forums, like really bad for team tournaments, but it does make for swingy and I think sometimes entertaining games. So now I'm going to charge him with these Imperial Guards, see if I can do some damage to that unit. Why not? He's going to charge me anyway. And then I move up with the Flagellants into the ruins there, not to charge, but because then I'm going to force him to charge me or shoot me, but with a negative modifier. So anyway, can't hurt, just move him into the ruins. I charge into the Nashers on the left here that he moved up as chaff. And then I turn my crossbows around finally, but I realize, again, there's no more 7s to hit, and I'm unwieldy, so I'm hitting on 6s. But if you're just touching a forest terrain feature, you're at -1 hit, so I can't even shoot them. So that's unfortunate. But not much to do about it. And yeah, still engaged in combat there. And then he had rallied with his Nashers in the prior turn, so the Rangers are just sitting around hoping to do some more wounds there. I had, I don't think I have a picture of the charge. Nothing happens in the magic or the shooting phase of note, but I had actually charged in with the Riders, who have fire on impact, which means they basically get to do a shooting attack, but it's, in this case, would be on 3s to hit instead of 4s to hit, and it's at agility 10. So I thought I could do enough wounds to kill off this unit, and I wasn't able to, or at least do enough wounds that he wouldn't be able to kill me in response, but not able to do that. He kills me in response. I lose the unit of Knightly Orders here, but I'm able to finish off the Goblins that I was engaged with those 2 characters with. So over here I killed the Nashers and then turned to face the bunker with my big unit there. So I'm hoping I'll just be able to run him down with combat res. I'll combo charge with the Prelate. We'll see what we can do. Yeah, I think this is just another shot of functionally the same thing there. On the right, unfortunately, the Imperial Guard can't stop that big brick of Goblins, so they get run down. And then this is now his turn. So he charges in with the remaining 3 Nasher Dashers into my character unit there. And then on the right, he tries to charge with his Nashers, but fails that charge. And then I think again doesn't charge me, he just moves up, but yeah, I'm not, or maybe he failed to charge. I can't exactly remember, but anyway, he's just sitting in front of me. And then he moves a Mad Git. He had a Mad Git that was over kind of to the right of those 2 remaining Flagellants, so he moved them toward the Swordsman, which is unfortunate because what this means is that if I charge that bunker, I'm not only going to take dangerous terrain tests with a giant-ass unit, I'm going to take 3d6 hits from running over that Mad Git. So the safe play is probably to not, but again, I don't tend to play safe. So no, he must have just moved up and not charged because he does some shooting and pulling some wounds off there. And then, yeah, holy hell, not only that, he had tried to shoot at me with his Git launchers and landed another Mad Git basically right underneath where that order card is. So I had to run through 2 Mad Gits, take 3d6 hits, and took dangerous terrain. But I still thought it was worth it, so that you could see that unit of 40 got knocked down to like 17 models, 16 models, because I got a character in there. So yeah, I took a ton of damage, but I'm charging with the Prelate too, so I'm hoping I can basically just break his Steadfast and do enough damage that I can pop this unit. So, because that's basically all of his points are tied up in this unit, so we'll see how we do. And then I turn to face down here with the crossbows and with my characters. And then I already showed you that. Yeah, but this is where it ends. I end up breaking and running down the unit. So that's awesome. So definitely worth the trade there, because I was able to, in the magic phase, get grind attacks as well. So I did everything I could to just do wounds in that combat, and it ends up paying off. So I end up killing that bunker, run it down. And this is now into his, I think, last turn. So he charges in with the Dashers on the right. He does finally charge in with the Gogtucks down here. And he, I was joking about this, man. So he had to kill these 2 Flagellants, and he has these 2 Git launchers to screw his secondary. I think he needed 5s to hit, but ends up rolling 2 6s with both of the git launchers, which you would think would be a good thing, except that a 6 now drops a mad git instead of doing damage. So he needed 5s. He wanted 5s to hit them, but couldn't do it. Oh no, it was even worse than that, because he ignores cover, so he was hitting me on 4s. So 4s or 5s would have killed him, and instead he rolled 2 6s. So he dropped 2 more mad gits. So I was saying that this is his mad git purgatory, is that he gets all the mad gits he could ever want, but they can't do anything because it's his last turn. He kills the crossbows, overruns, and that's where the unit ends up. And then in my last turn, I charge in with the 2 units up here to clean up those points up top, get it, and in the end, he ends up getting primary. I think neither of us secured secondary, so it ends up being a 13-7 on points, but he got objective for a 10-10 push. So hell of a game, lots of dead models. You can see the dead pile. My dead pile looked the same. So yeah, really fantastic opponent, fun game, and I'll take a 10-10 any day, but especially against a list with that many mad gits. And then we're into the final game here. So this was against Brian, a club mate of mine, really nice guy, and I seem to play him in every tournament, I think. But he was taking Infernal Dwarves this game. Pretty tough Infernal Dwarves gun line. And let me go through his deployment. He's got a tank with the nab thrower on the left, unit of Vassal Cav, unit of 18 Infernal Warriors with great weapons and blunderbusses. That's a Bull of Shamut General up on top. He's got the Onyx Core, so he's pretty nasty. Titan Mortar with a unit of Immortals with a BSB and a level 3, or he's an Adept, I think, caster, engineer. Then he's got another unit of Infernal Warriors with great weapons and blunderbusses. Both those units shoot in 3 ranks because they've got the banner of the thrice branded. He's got another unit of Vassals, and then he's got a unit of 5 Taruk Anointed. So they only got 1 wound, but they're res 5, and they do a lot of damage. So by deployment, I get kind of weird on this one, because my logic is that you can kind of play against lists like this one of 2 ways. Either safely, which is I can just stay back and try to stay out of his range, because he's only like a threat range 21 with those blunderbusses if he marches up and shoots. So for like at least 2 turns, I can stay out of his shooting range and kind of mitigate the amount of damage he can do. But as I kind of alluded to in the last game, I don't play that way. I'd rather just swing big and sometimes miss big, but we'll see how it goes. So what I end up doing is on the left, I deploy my... I'm going to go second. He got first turn, but I got the defender's bonus, so... I deploy my knights way off on the left with my general and my BSB, because I want to run them at that tank, because my Sunstall guy, I think, is pretty much the only thing I have that can take it down. So that's what I do. So I deploy over on the left. I use the Rangers to give them vanguards. That's why they vanguarded up. And then the rest of my army, you can see I've got the Imperial Guard next to the unit of 40 swords. I've got the 2 units of flagellants in front of the cart there, and then crossbows on the hill. And over on the right, both unit of riders are going to try to shoot at the stuff on the right, and then another unit of Imperial Guard. This is the same map. I'm on the same side for this final game here. In terms of objectives, it's this time we're trying to get... hell, I can't remember what the secondary... I know my secondary was I needed to get shooting units into the 2 terrain features on the board there, and I think this one was spoils, so we're trying to kill scoring units. So anyway, that's where things sit. My opponent gets first turn, and you can see he goes into like a kind of castle-y, scary formation like this here. So he's in kind of a outward-facing V formation now. Magic, he gets Cage of Embers on the unit of flagellants in the very center, so that does some wounds to him. And then my turn, I am not messing around. So I give myself the movement orders, because the Knightly orders are a parent unit when the Knight Commanders join to them, so the BSB can give them an order. So I give them the mobility order, so they can march up really, really far. And they've got Stalker standards, so they run through the water, no problem. And then everybody else runs up as far as they can, because I'm accepting I'm going to have at least 1 turn of really bad shooting. Like, I'm going to get shot at, and it's going to hurt. And I'm hoping just with target saturation that I can overwhelm him and get to combat quickly, especially with these flagellants in the middle. I think they can do a number on those units. So we'll see. He stands and shoots. He shoots in 3 ranks. It's going to be a grind, but we'll do the best we can. Nothing happens really in the magic phase. In the shooting phase, I'm able to blast off the first of the 2 units of Vassal Cav. You can see them kind of in front of his units there, and they're now gone between the riders, and I think the crossbows have to help out. And now we're into his turn 2. So he moves up with the tank to shoot at because it's got a flamethrower, so it does a 3x5 template. He's going to try to kill off a big chunk of those swordsmen there. And then the Vassal Cav come up to chaff the knights so that I can't flank charge the tank. So that's unfortunate. And then over on the right, he's rushing at me with his blunderbusses. They weren't quite in range to be able to march up and shoot the flagellants, or I think maybe he was just afraid to move them too far out of his battle line, so he's just going to try to clean up those riders. Gets Cage of Embers off again, so they're going to take some more damage. They also took damage from moving in my last movement phase, but it's kind of a damn the torpedoes approach here. I'm just running at him. And then, yeah, he does kill. This is in front of that impassable, so he does shoot off those riders over on the right. I will say, my opponent got really unlucky with his Titan mortar. It's been firing every turn, but it's been missing every turn. He's been rolling like a 1 and a 2. This is now his turn 2, so he's missed both times. But the flamethrower does knock off a bunch of wounds here. Yeah, and he is not able to shoot at me with the blunderbusses. I think they just end up kind of either wasting their shots because I don't think they're in range of shooting at the handgunners. But yeah, you can't shoot me through the tank. So the Vassal Cav just do 1 wound. I think he got lucky there, but did a wound. And then we're into my turn 2. So this gets crazy. So this is from me marching up with my flagellants, but look up here. You can see I've charged in with my sword and board boys, and I've charged my Sunstall guy out of the knightly orders into the flank of the tank. And my hope is that he's going to do a couple of wounds just naturally, and that with all this static combat res being brought in, I'll be able to pop this tank, and then overrun. I'll be able to overrun. I can't overrun with the swords, or I shouldn't. I'm just going to pivot them. But I want to overrun with my Sunstall guy into that unit with the blunderbusses so he can't shoot at me, at least tie him up for a turn. They got great weapons. It's not going to be real fun to fight them in combat, but again, it's better than getting shot at with that many blunderbusses at close range. So see what I can pull off here. And yeah, I move up with the Imperial Guard like that, again, anticipating that if I do pop that tank, I'll be able to pivot with the swordsman. And the knightly orders unfortunately can't do anything because I charged out of the unit with the Sunstall guys, so they're just going to kind of stand there and look pretty. And then over on the right, you can see I've moved up with the riders, and this is now, I think, after my shooting phase, because I've done a wound over there. No, it's not. That must have been I did a wound in the last shooting phase. I'm just showing you that I moved them into position. In the magic phase, I get flaming swords off on the swordsman, which is cool actually, because it means they're going to have advantage position and +1 to wound from flaming swords. So I wound on 6s, but in this case, I'm going to wound that tank on 4s. So still a lot of armor. I'm only AP 0, but that's, I thought, noteworthy. Maybe get lucky and do an extra wound there. Combat res is really going to matter on that one. In the shooting phase, the crossbows have just been plinking at the Immortals there, which is the centermost unit. Because it was a small-ish unit, or I guess I should say a medium unit to begin with. So if I'm doing like 2 wounds a turn, that's going to help for when we inevitably get into combat. And yeah, look at this. So yeah, between all that combat res, I'm able to do enough wounds to pop the tank. I turn to face with the swordsman, but you can see I'm 1 inch away. If I'd gotten 1 more inch on my overrun, I would have been able to hit that unit of blunderbusses. But that's all right. Can take the victories we get. Over on the right, this is now his turn, so he's charging in with the Anointed and the Imperial Guard. They've got paired weapons, so they're gonna hurt. And he does end up charging the Immortals into the Flagellants. I think the logic here was that he wanted to do that instead of having them charge the blunderbusses, or even better to do that than be charged, right? So anyway, and over here, the other blunderbusses move up to shoot at the other unit of Flagellants that's been pretty much untouched, and does so. Actually, that's after his shooting. Yeah, he doesn't really do that many wounds. I think it was 4. So yeah, that's part of the problem with them, I guess, is they're basically always hitting on 5s, but hitting on 5s means, in this case, he's hitting on 5s, so not that many to begin with, and then force rerolls to wound, because the Flagellants rule forces rerolls against strength 5 and under. So They only take 4 wounds. And then in the combat, yeah, he does a handful of wounds to me, but I do 2 back to him, and I think we push combat. Ooh, and then you can see here the Flagellants did some wounds to the Immortals. There's only 10 left because, as I said, they've been taking damage from the crossbows. But one stupid guy is standing there after they take their unruly wounds away. So that's fun. I'll take that. And then he had, I don't know if that happened this phase. Maybe I just don't have a shot of it. Yeah, he had charged in with his bull, but I didn't mention it because I didn't take a picture of it, which is uncharacteristic. Yeah, so he had charged in with his bull over on the left into the Knightly Orders and managed to kill off the BSB because he's got the Onyx Core, which does D3 wounds. But I'm able to get 2 wounds off on him as well. So, yeah, I think he loses combat, but he holds, if I remember correctly. And in the shooting phase, he'd only done 1 wound to my general over there. Or 2 wounds. Yeah, he did 2 wounds to the general because he had none to begin with. And then we're back to the shooting there. And, yeah, I charge with the general and the unit here, and they're both close enough that he couldn't stand and shoot against me. Imperial Guard charged the flank over here, which frees up this unit of Flagellants, and the Riders, again, their brace for impact, or fire on impact rule is pretty nasty, especially charging in the rear. So I think with all that static combat res and the wounds from the Flagellants, I'll be able to do some damage over there. That combat's just grinding on. Nothing really to do. Crossbows shoot. No, I think they start marching up. Yeah, they do. So I march up with the crossbows because there's nothing for them to shoot at, and part of my secondary is to get them into that terrain feature in the center, so might as well start working our way toward it. Magic, nothing to write home about, and again, there's now no shooting to talk about. So in the combat phase, he does a wound to me, but I finished that unit off, so that's lucky. I break him over here because the Lamassu guy, not the Lamassu, it looks like a Lamassu, it's a Bullet Shemut. He does a couple of wounds, but he's really not designed to chew through 1-up armor cav. He's really designed to go after like monsters and characters. So he only does a couple of wounds to me, but because they have cav picks, I'm chewing through his armor pretty good. So he's up to 4 wounds now, I think. And I break him because I've got a decent enough amount of static combat res. So he runs. I don't catch him, but I run into the Vassal Cav here on the left. And I do the Flagellant combat next. And over here you can see we do a ton of wounds to each other. Kills off 4 of the riders, but I still have a rear. I had charge, a bunch of static res, but he holds because I think they're stubborn in the first round of combat, which makes them even nastier. And then here, yeah, the Immortals are almost gone. There's 2 characters in there, so I do enough wounds to the Immortals to bring them down, but he's bodyguard, so we're just going to sit there and do another round of combat. And then up here, I do a bunch of wounds, but he's not dead yet. He holds, so all of his stuff's engaged now, though, so at least I'm not getting shot at, so that's fun. And then I think that was my opponent's turn being shown there, because I don't know why. Oh, because I had, yeah. The Vassals are dead. They were engaged with the Vassal Cap. That makes sense. So now they're pivoting, turning to face the fleeing bull. And now we're in his magic phase, right? So in the magic phase, he casts Cage of Embers onto the Imperial Guard there. And then the Titan Mortar finally connects with the Imperial Guard. It was the only really target worth shooting at, so he does some wounds over there. And then, yeah, in combat, I'm able to finish off this. He does kill the Rider, so he gets the full points for those, but the Flagellants kill off the rest of the unit, run them down, so that's where they sit. In the center, I'm able to do the same thing with his bodyguard unit. I do enough wounds between the great weapons in the flank and the prelate to kill off the 3 remaining guys, and then he's no longer bodyguard. And then between that and the static res, I'm able to run him down. So I catch him in a pretty good spot there. Let me zoom back out. And then, yeah, get even luckier because the other unit finally does break too. Again, they're stubborn in the first round of combat, but not the second. So able to run him down. He does get my general, though, because those guys had great weapons. So he kills the general. He only had 1 wound left, but the heavy infantry run him down. So really the only things he's got left now are the general on the bull, which has 1 wound remaining, and then the Titan Mortar. And so I charge in with everybody. So Knightly Orders charge in there. The Flagellants, the the flagellants move into position just in case things go awry, to be able to try to help. And then the crossbows move up because we're just trying to secure that objective. I get Dragon's Roar off because I'm just trying to do one wound to this guy. So between everything, the hope is I'll be able to do that. And we kill the Titan Mortar over on the right-hand side. And then they turn to face. They're not able to, you can see I've taken 2 more wounds here. I'm getting kind of quick, but so he's only got his general and the bull left with 1 wound against everything left that you see on the board there. Yeah, he's just got the general. This is basically the last shot of the game. So he's got his general on the bull, and I do end up killing him off with the knightly orders there. So this is how things end. I got primary and secondary and end up with a 20-0. So Brian's a fantastic one. I really enjoy playing against him. Even though things didn't go his way, he never like complains and is just all around a really pleasant guy to deal with. So thank you for the game. In the end, it was a 20-0 to me and a 46 out of 60 for the event, which dropped me into 3rd place. So really, really fun event. Great group of guys. I think we had 16 people show up, which is pretty fantastic for our neck of the woods. So looking forward to the next event here. So anyway, probably won't be any more like gaming content for a little while here. As I said, I don't get out the game very often, so next one's probably not going to be till like the late spring. So there might be a tournament report popping up around then if that's something that you're looking for. But otherwise, in the meantime, there'll be plenty of review and painting content to come. So really appreciate you dropping by for this one if you stuck through to the end. And until next time, happy gaming.